The Halloween party at Richard's house was already in full swing when Alicia and I arrived, her black leather catsuit gleaming under the porch lights like liquid midnight. She'd spent 3 hours perfecting that costume, every curve highlighted, every detail precise. Meanwhile, I'd thrown on a pirate shirt and called it good enough. "Greg, you look like you raided a thrift store." Richard laughed, opening the door wide. His vampire costume was elaborate, complete with fake fangs that made him lisp slightly. "That's because I did," I replied, adjusting my plastic sword. "Unlike some people, I don't need to mortgage the house for a costume." Alicia shot me a look that could have frozen champagne. "It's one night a year, Greg. Some of us like to make an effort." The house buzzed with conversation and laughter. Couples mingled in the living room while music thumped from hidden speakers. I recognized most faces: suburban neighbors, coworkers, the usual suspects who gathered whenever Richard and Nikki threw one of their legendary parties. "Drinks are in the kitchen," Nikki announced, appearing beside us in an elaborate fairy costume. "And Greg, ignore Richard. You look perfectly roguish." I watched Alicia glide into the crowd, immediately becoming the center of attention. She had that magnetic quality that drew people like moths to flame. Men's eyes followed her movements, while women whispered among themselves, probably wondering how she maintained that figure at 35. The kitchen was packed with people grabbing drinks and appetizers. I was reaching for a bottle when I spotted him. Dominic Reeves from Alicia's gym. 6'3" of muscle wrapped in a Tarzan costume that left little to imagination. He was talking to Susie, Alicia's best friend, who was also dressed as Catwoman. "Two Catwomen," I muttered, popping open a bottle. "How original." "What's that?" asked Karen, the bartender Richard had hired for the evening. "Nothing, just observing the wildlife." I moved closer, pretending to examine the appetizer spread while listening to their conversation. "She should be here soon," Susie was saying. "You know how she likes to make an entrance." Dominic chuckled, a low rumble that made my teeth itch. "Always worth the wait. That woman knows how to wear leather." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. The way he said it carried too much familiarity, too much appreciation for my wife's wardrobe choices. "Greg," Alicia appeared at my elbow, her hand sliding around my arm. "There you are. Come meet everyone." She led me through the crowd, introducing me to people I'd met dozens of times before. Her grip on my arm felt performative, like she was playing the role of devoted wife for an audience that wasn't paying attention. "And this is my husband, Greg," she said to a couple dressed as pirates. "He manages that new restaurant downtown." "Which one?" the woman asked. "Meridian Grill," I replied. "We specialize in making reservations disappear and turning simple meals into mortgage payments." They laughed, but Alicia's smile tightened. She hated when I joked about work, especially when it highlighted our financial struggles. As the evening progressed, I found myself watching Alicia more carefully. She moved through the party like she owned it, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, touching arms and shoulders with casual intimacy, but her eyes kept drifting toward Dominic. Around 10 o'clock, I was talking to Richard about football when I noticed Alicia and Dominic had disappeared. Susie was still in the living room, deep in conversation with some guy dressed as a zombie, but the other two Catwomen were nowhere to be seen. "Excuse me," I told Richard, heading toward the kitchen. They were by the back door, standing closer than the conversation required. Alicia's hand rested on Dominic's chest while he leaned down to whisper something in her ear. She threw her head back and laughed, the sound carrying across the kitchen like breaking glass. "Having fun?" I asked, approaching with what I hoped looked like casual interest. They stepped apart quickly, guilt written across both faces. "Just getting some air," Alicia said. "It's stuffy in here." "Must be all that leather," I replied, looking directly at Dominic. "Hard to breathe when you're wrapped up tight." His jaw tightened. "Yeah, well, some of us aren't afraid to make an effort. Some of us don't need costumes to play pretend." The tension crackled between us like static electricity. Alicia stepped forward, placing herself between us. "Greg, don't be ridiculous, we were just talking." "About what?" "Gym stuff," Dominic said. "Training routines, nothing that would interest you." The dismissal stung more than it should have. I was about to respond when Susie appeared, sliding up to Dominic with predatory grace. "There you are," she purred. "I've been looking everywhere." "Just catching up with old friends," he replied, his eyes still locked on mine. Old friends. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. How old? How friendly? Questions I couldn't ask without sounding paranoid. "Well," I said finally, "don't let me interrupt the reunion." I turned and walked away, leaving them in their tight little circle. Behind me, I heard Alicia call my name, but I kept walking. The rest of the party blurred together, forced conversations, fake laughter, and the growing certainty that something was wrong. I watched Alicia from across the room, noting how she avoided eye contact, how she stayed close to Susie, how she kept checking her phone. Around midnight, she found me on the back patio, nursing my fourth drink and staring at the stars. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Are you?" "What's that supposed to mean?" I turned to face her, taking in the costume that had drawn so much attention, the makeup that had taken hours to perfect, the carefully constructed image of the woman I'd married. "Nothing," I said. "Just seems like you were having a good time." I was. It's called socializing, Greg. You should try it sometime. We drove home in silence, the space between us feeling wider than the car's interior. Alicia stared out her window while I navigated empty suburban streets, both of us lost in thoughts we couldn't share. Later, lying in bed while she showered off her costume, I replayed the evening's events. The whispered conversations, the meaningful looks, the way Dominic had said, "old friends," like it was a private joke. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the drinks had made me paranoid. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation for everything I'd witnessed. But as I listened to the water running in the bathroom, washing away the night's performance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real masquerade was just beginning. The week following the party passed in a haze of forced normalcy. Alicia went through her usual routines, morning workouts, afternoon clients, evening meal prep, but something had shifted. She was more distant, more secretive, more likely to take phone calls in another room. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that the Halloween party had planted seeds of suspicion where none should exist. But Thursday morning, everything changed. "I need to tell you something," Alicia announced over breakfast, her voice carrying that particular tone women use when they've already made a decision and are just informing you about it. I looked up from my coffee, noting how she'd positioned herself across the kitchen island, putting distance between us. "Susie wants to do a girls' weekend in Miami," she continued. "Next weekend. She found some great deals on hotels." "Miami?" I repeated. "That's sudden." "Not really. We've been talking about it for weeks. You just haven't been paying attention." The accusation stung because it might have been true. Between managing the restaurant's chaos and dealing with our mounting bills, I'd been distracted lately. "How much is this going to cost?" Her expression hardened. "It's my money too, Greg. I work just as hard as you do." "I know that. I'm just saying we're not exactly swimming in disposable income right now." "God, you sound like my father. Everything has to be about money with you." She was deflecting, turning a reasonable question into an attack on my character. It was a tactic she'd perfected over the years, making me feel guilty for having practical concerns. "When would you leave?" "Friday afternoon, back Sunday night." "And you're staying where?" "Some hotel Susie found. I don't remember the name." She was already moving toward the door, grabbing her gym bag. "I'll text you the details." She kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture that felt more like checking a box than showing affection. "Don't be so controlling, Greg. It's just a girls' weekend." The front door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded final. I sat in the empty kitchen, her words echoing in my head. Controlling. When had wanting basic information about my wife's travel plans become controlling? When had asking reasonable questions become an attack on her independence? My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Great party last night. You and Alicia seemed to have fun. Last night? The party had been a week ago. I stared at the message, confusion giving way to realization. Richard was talking about something else, some event I apparently knew nothing about. I called him immediately. Hey, what party are you talking about? The one at Nikki's sister's place. Alicia said you couldn't make it because of work, but she came anyway. Good for her, not letting your schedule control her social life. The words hit me like ice water. Alicia had gone to a party without telling me, then apparently told people I'd chosen work over attending. Right, I managed. Yeah, busy night at the restaurant. She looked amazing, by the way. That red dress was stunning, and she seemed to be having a great time with that guy from her gym. Dominic? That's the one. They were quite the dance partners. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. A party I'd known nothing about. A red dress I'd never seen. Dancing with Dominic while telling people I was too busy to attend. The pieces of a picture I didn't want to see were starting to come together. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I checked our cell phone records online. The account was in my name, which meant I could access everything. Alicia's call and text logs painted an interesting story. Multiple daily exchanges with Susie, which was normal, but also frequent communication with a number I didn't recognize. Long conversations late at night when she claimed to be asleep. Text messages at times when she was supposedly with clients. I cross-referenced the unknown number with social media, a skill I'd picked up during my brief stint in marketing before the restaurant business claimed my soul. The number belonged to Dominic Reeves. They'd been talking every day for 3 weeks. My hands shook slightly as I scrolled through the data. Not just quick exchanges, but lengthy conversations, calls that lasted an hour or more. Text threads that showed the kind of frequency you'd expect between people planning something together, or people who couldn't stay away from each other. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen, needing something to do with my hands. The breakfast dishes still sat in the sink, abandoned when Alicia had rushed off to her morning workout, or whatever she was actually doing. The Miami trip suddenly made perfect sense. Not a girls' weekend, but a romantic getaway with built-in cover story. Susie probably wasn't even going, but I needed proof before making accusations. Suspicion wasn't evidence, and Alicia was smart enough to have explanations for everything if I confronted her without facts. I spent the rest of the day planning. If she was going to Miami for reasons other than friendship with Susie, there would be evidence. Hotel reservations, flight information, credit card records, modern affairs left digital footprints everywhere. When Alicia came home that evening, she was glowing with the kind of energy that comes from anticipation. I booked the flights, she announced. Friday at 2:30. Susie's so excited. Where are you staying again? The Meridian. Susie got us a great rate. Sounds perfect, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. You deserve a break. She seemed surprised by my easy acceptance. Really? You're not going to make this difficult? Why would I? You're right. It's just a girls' weekend. That night she was more affectionate than she'd been in weeks, curling up against me in bed like she used to when we were newlyweds. I love you, she whispered in the darkness. I love you too, I whispered back, and meant it, which made what I was planning to do hurt even more. Friday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Alicia left for the airport in an Uber, her suitcase packed with clothes that seemed more suited for impressing someone than relaxing with a girlfriend. An hour after her departure, I was at my computer, armed with confirmation numbers from her email, and a determination to learn the truth. The Meridian Hotel in Miami had no record of a reservation under Alicia's name or Susie's name, but they did have a room booked for the weekend under the name Dominic Reeves, a room with a king-size bed. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred together, the final piece of evidence I'd hoped I wouldn't find. My wife was spending the weekend in Miami with another man, lying about every detail except the destination. For a moment, I considered calling her, demanding explanations, giving her a chance to come clean. But something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe strategy, maybe the growing realization that this betrayal ran deeper than a simple affair. Instead, I picked up my phone and searched for a different number. If Alicia and Dominic were in Miami together, his wife deserved to know. Patricia Reeves answered on the third ring. "Hello? Mrs. Reeves, this is Greg Blackwood. I think we need to talk." Patricia Reeves lived in a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Pristine landscaping, perfect paint, the kind of suburban paradise that required constant maintenance to sustain the illusion. I sat in my car outside for 5 minutes, gathering courage for a conversation I'd never imagined having. She answered the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching from the window. Patricia was smaller than I'd expected, with prematurely gray hair and tired eyes that suggested she'd been carrying suspicions of her own. "You must be Greg," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I've been expecting this call for months." Her living room was immaculate, decorated in neutral tones that revealed nothing about the people who lived there. Family photos lined the mantel, wedding pictures, vacation shots, images of a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. "I'm not sure where to start," I admitted, settling into a chair that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Start with what you know," Patricia said, sitting across from me with the rigid posture of someone bracing for impact. "I'll fill in the gaps." I told her about the phone records, the secret party, the Miami trip that wasn't what it seemed. She listened without interruption, nodding occasionally like she was confirming details of a story she already knew. "The gym," she said when I finished. "That's where it started. Dominic joined 6 months ago, supposedly to get back in shape. Suddenly he was there every day, sometimes twice a day, always talking about this amazing trainer who was helping him reach his goals. Alicia. He'd come home energized in a way I hadn't seen in years, talking about fitness and nutrition and how much better he felt about himself. I was happy for him at first." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at her perfect yard. "Then the late nights started, business calls that couldn't wait, overtime shifts that weren't reflected in his paychecks, text messages that made him smile in ways I never could anymore." "Did you confront him?" "Once. He said I was being paranoid, that work was stressful, and the gym was his outlet. Made me feel guilty for questioning him." She turned back to face me. "Sound familiar?" It did. The deflection, the guilt, the way legitimate concerns got twisted into character flaws. Apparently, cheaters used the same playbook regardless of gender. "I have something to show you," Patricia said, leaving the room briefly before returning with a tablet. "I started documenting things a few weeks ago. Call it insurance." She showed me photos of Dominic leaving the gym with Alicia, their body language intimate in ways that went beyond trainer and client. Screenshots of his phone bill showing the same pattern I'd discovered, frequent, lengthy calls with Alicia's number. Credit card statements revealing charges at restaurants and hotels I knew my wife had never mentioned. "This one's from last Tuesday," she said, showing me a photo of Dominic and Alicia at an upscale restaurant downtown. "He told me he was working late. She told you she was with a client, I'm guessing." The evidence was overwhelming, painting a picture of a relationship that had been developing for months while both of us remained oblivious. "What do you want to do about it?" I asked. Patricia's expression hardened. "I want them to face consequences, real ones, not just a tearful apology and a promise to do better." "What did you have in mind?" She pulled up another screen on her tablet, showing the hotel reservation I'd discovered earlier. "They think they're being clever, booking under his name while telling us different stories about where they are. But hotel reservations are public records if you know how to access them. You want to confront them in Miami? I want to document everything: photos, videos, evidence that can't be denied or explained away. Then I want to make sure everyone in their social circle knows exactly what kind of people they really are. The plan was more comprehensive than simple confrontation. Patricia had clearly been thinking about this longer than I had, developing a strategy that would expose the affair while protecting our own interests. "There's something else," she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I think this Miami trip is more than just a romantic getaway. I think they're planning something bigger." "Like what?" "I found some paperwork in Dominic's office, consultations with divorce attorneys, research on asset protection and custody arrangements. They're not just having an affair, Greg. They're planning their exit strategy." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated destruction of everything I'd built. "When were you going to tell me this?" "I wasn't sure until now. But seeing your evidence, talking to you, it all fits. They're using this weekend to finalize their plans." We spent the next 2 hours going through everything Patricia had collected, building a comprehensive picture of the deception. By the time I left her house, we had a plan that would turn their romantic weekend into the beginning of their downfall. The first step was simple: let them think they'd gotten away with it. I drove home and sent Alicia a text. "Hope you're having fun with Susie. Love you." Her response came 20 minutes later. "Beach is beautiful. Wish you were here." Except the hotel reservation showed they were staying downtown, nowhere near the beach. That evening, I called Richard and asked if he wanted to grab dinner. We met at a sports bar near his house, the kind of place where conversations got lost in crowd noise and television commentary. "You seem distracted," he observed after we'd ordered. "Work stuff," I lied. "Restaurant business is brutal this time of year." "How's Alicia's Miami trip going?" "Good, I think. She's having fun with Susie." Richard's expression shifted slightly. "Susie? I thought she was going with that guy from her gym." My heart stopped. "What guy?" "Dominic something. Nikki mentioned it yesterday. Said Susie told her that Alicia was finally taking a real vacation with someone who appreciated her." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Susie knew. Not only knew, but was apparently helping to cover for them. Must have been a misunderstanding, I managed. But Richard was already pulling out his phone. "Let me check. Nikki's got all the gossip." He typed quickly, then waited for a response. When it came, his face went pale. "Greg, I'm sorry. I thought you knew." "Knew what?" "Nikki says half the gym knows about Alicia and Dominic. They've been pretty open about it. People assumed you had some kind of arrangement." The humiliation was complete. Not only was my wife cheating, but she was doing it so openly that strangers felt sorry for me. "How long?" I asked. "Nikki's not sure. A few months at least." I excused myself and went to the bathroom, needing a moment to process the magnitude of the betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a public humiliation that everyone knew about except me. When I returned to the table, Richard was looking at me with a mixture of sympathy and awkwardness. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish this," I said, "and I'm going to make sure everyone who thought this was entertaining gets to see how it ends." The next morning, I called Patricia. "Change of plans," I told her. "We're not just exposing them, we're destroying them." Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. While Alicia was presumably enjoying Miami sunshine with her lover, I sat in my kitchen planning the systematic destruction of everything they'd built together. Patricia arrived at 9, carrying a laptop bag and wearing the determined expression of someone ready for battle. "I brought everything," she said, settling at my kitchen table. "Bank records, phone logs, photos, hotel confirmations, plus a few things you haven't seen yet." She opened her laptop and showed me a folder labeled Evidence. Inside were dozens of files documenting the affair in exhaustive detail. "This is from their first hotel stay," she said, opening a photo that showed Dominic and Alicia entering a downtown hotel 3 weeks earlier. I followed him that night when he said he was working late. "You've been doing surveillance?" "I've been protecting my interests. There's a difference." The photos were damning. Intimate moments captured through restaurant windows, stolen kisses in parking lots, the body language of people who thought they were invisible. "But this is the important one," Patricia continued, opening a video file. "From last Tuesday." The video showed Alicia and Dominic in what appeared to be a coffee shop, leaning close over documents spread across their table. The audio was unclear, but their expressions were serious, businesslike. "What are they looking at?" "Legal documents. I enhanced the image as much as possible." She zoomed in on the papers. "Divorce filings, both of them. They're coordinating their strategies." The betrayal reached a new level. This wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy to destroy both marriages simultaneously while maximizing their own benefits. "There's more," Patricia said, opening another file. "I managed to get into Dominic's email account. He's not very creative with passwords." The emails revealed the scope of their planning: discussions about asset division, custody arrangements, even conversations about which house they'd keep after the divorces were finalized. "They're planning to move in together," I said, reading over her shoulder. "In 6 months, right after they think the dust settles from destroying our lives." One email chain made me particularly angry. Alicia and Dominic discussing how to maximize their divorce settlements, including strategies for hiding assets and painting their spouses as controlling and emotionally abusive. "Look at this one," Patricia said, highlighting a message from Alicia. "She's planning to claim you've been financially controlling and emotionally distant. Says she has witnesses who'll testify about your behavior at parties." Witnesses. Susie, apparently, and some people from the gym who've only heard Alicia's version of your marriage. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. They weren't just cheating, they were building a narrative that would justify their actions while painting us as the villains. "We need to flip the script," I said. "Agreed, but carefully. If we move too fast or too obviously, they'll just claim we're the crazy ex-spouses trying to cause trouble." We spent the morning developing a strategy that would expose them gradually, building public awareness of their deception before they could control the narrative. "Phase 1, Patricia explained, is documentation. We need irrefutable proof of everything: the affair, the conspiracy, the lies they've told. Phase 2? We start letting the truth slip out. Carefully. To the right people. Let them spread the story organically. And phase 3? Patricia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We let them hang themselves. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than confronting them directly, we'd create a situation where their own actions would expose them publicly. "The gym," I said. "That's where this started, and that's where everyone knows about it." "Exactly. Alicia's built her reputation there as the wronged wife with the inattentive husband. Time to show people who she really is." We spent the afternoon preparing. Patricia had membership at the same gym, which gave us access to the social network where Alicia had been building her false narrative. "Monday morning," Patricia said, "I'm going to start asking innocent questions. About the Miami trip, about Dominic's sudden business travel, about why they both seem so happy lately. Won't that seem suspicious? Not if I play it right. Concerned friend trying to understand why my husband's been acting strange. People love gossip, especially when it involves someone they think they know. Meanwhile, I would start my own campaign at work and in our social circle. Nothing direct, just casual mentions of Alicia's new friendship with her trainer, her sudden interest in fitness travel, her secretive phone calls. The key, Patricia explained, is to let other people connect the dots. When the truth comes out, it needs to feel like discovery, not accusation. Sunday evening, Alicia texted that her flight was delayed and she'd be home late. I responded with understanding sympathy, playing the role of supportive husband one last time. She arrived home around 11, glowing with what she claimed was Miami sunshine, but looked more like post-romantic bliss. "How was the trip?" I asked, helping her with her suitcase. "Amazing. Susie and I had such a good time. We barely left the hotel." The lie came so easily that I almost admired her skill. No hesitation, no telltale signs of deception, just smooth fiction delivered with perfect sincerity. "I missed you," she said, kissing me with lips that had probably kissed another man hours earlier. "I missed you too." That night, lying in bed while she showered off her weekend of betrayal, I thought about the woman I'd married and the stranger she'd become. Or maybe she'd always been this person, and I'd simply been too trusting to see it. Either way, that version of our marriage was over. Monday morning, Patricia and I began our campaign. "I'm worried about Dominic," she told 3 different people at the gym. "He's been so secretive lately, even took a mysterious trip to Miami this weekend." Meanwhile, I mentioned to Richard that Alicia seemed different since her girls' weekend, more energetic but also more distant. "Maybe she just needed the break," he suggested. "Maybe, although it's funny. She came back with a tan, but Susie posted photos from her weekend at home the whole time." Richard's expression shifted. "That's weird. Probably just a misunderstanding." But the seed was planted. Within hours, Richard had mentioned the discrepancy to Nikki, who mentioned it to her sister, who mentioned it to someone else. The telephone game of suburban gossip was remarkably efficient. By Wednesday, Patricia reported that people at the gym were asking questions. Someone mentioned that Dominic seemed really happy Monday morning, like he'd had a great weekend. When I said he'd been in Miami, they started putting pieces together. Any direct confrontations yet? Not yet, but people are watching them more carefully now and asking better questions. The beauty of the plan was its subtlety. We weren't making accusations. We were simply sharing information and letting others draw conclusions. Thursday evening, everything accelerated. Alicia came home from the gym visibly agitated, slamming doors and muttering under her breath. "Everything okay?" I asked. "People are gossiping," she snapped, "making up stories about things they don't understand." "What kind of stories?" "Stupid rumors. About me and Dominic. Like we can't be friends without people assuming something inappropriate." The fact that she brought up Dominic without prompting was telling. The pressure was getting to her. "I'm sure it'll blow over," I said. "People love to talk." "It better. I've worked too hard building my reputation to let jealous people destroy it with lies." But they weren't lies, and she knew it. The truth was finally catching up with both of them. Friday morning, Patricia called with an update. Dominic exploded at someone yesterday who made a joke about his Miami vacation, really lost his temper in front of half the gym. Good. Guilty people always overreact. There's more. I heard from someone who works at the hotel. Apparently they're planning another trip, next month, same setup. Not if we can help it. Phase 2 was working perfectly. The social pressure was mounting, their behavior was becoming erratic, and people were starting to see through their carefully constructed facades. Time for Phase 3. The opportunity came sooner than expected, gift-wrapped in Alicia's own arrogance. Saturday morning, she announced another girls' weekend, this time to Chicago with Susie. The same defensive tone, the same preemptive accusations about my controlling nature, the same lies delivered with practiced ease. "When?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Next weekend. Susie found a great hotel deal." "Sounds fun. You've been doing a lot of traveling lately." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all. You deserve to have fun with your friends." But this time, I was ready. Patricia and I had spent the week preparing for exactly this scenario. If they were planning another rendezvous, we'd make sure it became their last. "Same hotel as Miami?" I asked casually. "Different one. Susie's handling the arrangements." Another lie. I'd already checked. Dominic had made reservations at a boutique hotel in downtown Chicago under his own name. They weren't even trying to be creative anymore. That afternoon, while Alicia was at the gym spreading more lies about our marriage, I made a series of phone calls. First, to Richard and Nikki, inviting them to dinner the following weekend. We should do something fun, I suggested. Maybe drive up to Chicago for the weekend. Alicia's going to be there with Susie anyway. Really? What a coincidence. Isn't it? We could all meet up for dinner Saturday night. Richard thought it was a great idea. Nikki was enthusiastic about a spontaneous weekend trip. Next, I called Patricia. They booked the Chicago trip, I told her. Perfect. Are you ready for this? More than ready. The plan was simple but devastating. We'd arrange for multiple groups of friends to accidentally encounter Alicia and Dominic during their romantic weekend. Not just Patricia and me. That would look like stalking. But Richard and Nikki, other couples from their gym, people who knew both of them and would recognize the situation immediately. I'll coordinate the gym crowd, Patricia said. There's a group that goes to Chicago regularly for shopping trips. I'll suggest they move their next trip to this weekend. And I'll handle our social circle. By Saturday night, half their mutual friends will be in Chicago. What about confrontation? Do we approach them directly? No need. Just being seen together will be enough. Let other people draw their own conclusions and spread the word. Wednesday evening, Alicia came home in a foul mood again. The gossip at the gym is getting ridiculous, she complained. People are making up stories about everyone now. What kind of stories? Just stupid rumors. About who's sleeping with who's getting divorced, who's lying about what. It's like high school. Maybe people are just bored. Maybe people need to mind their own business. But her agitation suggested the social pressure was working. When people started questioning your story, maintaining lies became exhausting. Thursday, Patricia reported that Dominic was showing similar signs of stress. He snapped at his trainer yesterday when someone made a joke about personal training relationships. Then he spent 20 minutes explaining why he and Alicia are just friends. Over-explaining is always suspicious. Exactly. And the more defensive he gets, the more people start wondering what he's defending. Friday evening, Alicia packed for her Chicago trip with the same careful attention she'd shown for Miami. Clothes that were too nice for a girls' weekend, makeup that suggested romantic intentions, the general preparation of someone planning to impress. Have fun with Susie, I said, kissing her goodbye. I will. Try not to work the whole weekend. Actually, Richard and I might drive up to Chicago tomorrow, make a guy's weekend out of it. Her face went pale. Chicago? Why? Change of scenery. Maybe catch a Cubs game if we can get tickets. That's unexpected. Spontaneous. You're always saying I should be more spontaneous. She left for the airport looking troubled, probably already planning how to avoid being seen with Dominic in public spaces. Saturday morning, Patricia and I drove to Chicago with Richard and Nikki, followed by a caravan of other friends who'd decided to make a weekend of it. By afternoon, we'd established ourselves at restaurants and bars throughout downtown, a network of familiar faces in the exact area where Alicia and Dominic thought they were anonymous. This feels like a military operation, Nikki observed as we checked into our hotel. Just friends having a good time, I replied. What could be more innocent? The first sighting came around 6 p.m. Patricia texted from a restaurant 3 blocks away. Found them, holding hands at corner table, very cozy. 20 minutes later, another report from the gym crowd. Spotted them walking down State Street. Definitely not with Susie. By 8 o'clock, we had photographic evidence from multiple sources. Alicia and Dominic dining together, walking hand in hand, behaving like the couple they'd been pretending not to be. Should we approach them? Richard asked. He'd figured out what was happening and was fully committed to the plan. Not yet. Let them enjoy their evening. The real confrontation would come Sunday, when they thought they were safe. Patricia had arranged for the gym's Sunday morning yoga class to relocate to Chicago for a special urban wellness experience. 20 people who knew both Alicia and Dominic would be having brunch at the hotel restaurant exactly when the cheating couple planned to check out. Sunday morning, I positioned myself in the hotel lobby with Richard and Nikki, ostensibly waiting for our own checkout, while actually documenting the final act of Alicia and Dominic's deception. They emerged from the elevator at 10:30, looking relaxed and happy in the way people do after a romantic weekend. Alicia wore the same dress she'd worn to the secret party weeks earlier, the red one I'd never seen before. They were halfway across the lobby when Patricia's yoga group entered through the main doors, 20 familiar faces streaming into the space like a perfectly timed intervention. The recognition was instantaneous and mutual. Alicia froze mid-step, her face cycling through surprise, panic, and desperate calculation. Dominic looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. "Alicia!" called Susan from the gym. "What a surprise! I thought you were here with Susie." "And Dominic," added another voice. "Fancy meeting you here." The lobby fell silent, except for the distant sound of traffic and the quiet hum of air conditioning. 20 pairs of eyes took in the scene, the obvious couple, the matching luggage, the intimate body language that couldn't be explained away as friendship. "This isn't what it looks like," Alicia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Really?" Patricia stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "Because it looks like my husband and your wife have been lying to both of us." The confrontation that followed was swift and decisive. No screaming, no dramatic declarations, just the quiet exposure of truth in front of witnesses who would carry the story back to everyone they knew. Alicia tried to explain, to justify, to minimize, but faced with photographic evidence and multiple witnesses, her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. "We never meant for this to happen," she said finally. "But you did mean for it to continue," I replied. "And you meant to destroy our marriages while you were at it." The divorce papers Patricia had discovered were mentioned. The coordinated legal strategies were exposed. The months of lies and manipulation were laid bare in front of people who would never see either of them the same way again. By the time we left Chicago, their reputations were in ruins. The story would spread through the gym, their social circles, their professional networks. Everyone would know what kind of people they really were. Monday morning, I filed for divorce. Patricia did the same. By Wednesday, Alicia had moved out, staying with a friend whose couch was apparently more appealing than facing the consequences of her choices. By Friday, Dominic had been asked to leave the gym where their affair had flourished, the management deciding that his presence was disruptive to other members. The restaurant where I worked became a gathering place for people wanting updates on the drama. I found myself oddly popular, the wronged husband who'd outsmarted the cheaters and exposed their conspiracy. "How did you know?" people asked. "I paid attention," I replied, "something everyone should try." 3 weeks after Chicago, I was reorganizing my life with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned not to leave anything to chance. The divorce was proceeding smoothly, helped considerably by the evidence Patricia and I had gathered. Alicia's attempts to claim emotional abuse or financial control fell flat when confronted with documentation of her deception. She'd tried calling several times, wanting to explain and work things out, but there was nothing left to explain. The marriage had ended the moment she'd chosen to build a relationship with another man while lying about it. "You're being vindictive," she accused during one particularly unpleasant phone conversation. "This isn't the Greg I married." "The Greg you married was naive enough to trust you," I replied. "That person doesn't exist anymore. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. You planned this for months." The legal proceedings were straightforward. With documented evidence of adultery and conspiracy, Alicia's position was weak. Her lawyer had advised her to accept a simple division of assets, rather than fight a battle she couldn't win. Patricia was having similar success with Dominic, who'd apparently underestimated his wife's intelligence and determination. His plans for asset protection had backfired spectacularly when she'd documented his attempts to hide money. He actually tried to claim the affair was my fault, Patricia told me during one of our regular strategy sessions. Said I'd been emotionally distant and he'd sought comfort elsewhere. Classic cheater logic. Their actions are always someone else's responsibility. His lawyer told him to drop that approach when I showed them the emails about coordinating divorce strategies. We'd become unlikely friends through the process, bonded by shared betrayal and mutual determination to see justice done. Not revenge, justice. There was a difference, though the outcome was often similar. The social consequences for Alicia and Dominic were perhaps more devastating than the legal ones. Their affair had become public knowledge throughout their professional and personal networks. The gym had asked both to find alternative facilities. Mutual friends had chosen sides, and most had chosen ours. Karma's an interesting thing, Richard observed one evening over drinks. They thought they were so clever, planning everything in secret. But secrets have a way of becoming public when you hurt the wrong people. They hurt themselves, I corrected. We just made sure everyone could see it. November arrived with the kind of cold that reminded you winter was coming whether you were ready or not. The divorce would be final by Christmas, giving me a fresh start for the new year. Alicia had found an apartment across town, close to the new gym where she was trying to rebuild her client base. Word was that business was slow. People tended to be suspicious of fitness instructors who'd been caught lying about their personal lives. Dominic had taken a job in another city, apparently deciding that geographic distance was his best option for escaping the consequences of his choices. Patricia had heard he was struggling with the transition, having to start over professionally and personally. "Do you ever feel sorry for them?" she asked one afternoon, as we finalized the last details of our respective divorces. I considered the question seriously. I feel sorry for the people they used to be, before they decided that lying and cheating were acceptable. But the people they became? No. They made their choices. I keep thinking about all the time I wasted wondering what I'd done wrong, why my marriage was failing. Turns out it wasn't failing, it was being sabotaged. The worst part is how they made us complicit in our own betrayal. Every time we trusted them, we were helping them hurt us. December brought unexpected closure in the form of a letter from Alicia. Not an apology, she was still too proud for that, but an attempt at explanation. She wrote about feeling trapped in a marriage that had become routine, about meeting someone who made her feel alive again, about not knowing how to end things honorably. She claimed the deception had grown beyond her control, that she'd wanted to tell me the truth, but hadn't known how. "I never meant to hurt you," the letter concluded. "I just wanted to be happy." I read it twice, then filed it with the other divorce documents. Intent didn't matter when the actions were so destructive. Wanting to be happy didn't justify destroying someone else's life to achieve it. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for December 20th, a few days before Christmas. Appropriate timing, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Patricia and I met for coffee afterward, officially divorced and officially free. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About the marriage?" "Yes." "About how it ended?" "No. They forced us to choose between being victims or taking control of our own stories. I'm glad we chose control." "Me too." We parted ways that afternoon, probably for the last time. Our friendship had been born from shared trauma and sustained by mutual purpose. With both goals accomplished, there was no reason to maintain contact. I drove home to my empty house, which no longer felt empty. It felt peaceful. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with a glass of wine and thought about the past 6 months. The discovery, the investigation, the confrontation, the aftermath. All of it had been necessary, even the parts that had been painful. Alicia and Dominic had thought they were the protagonists of their own romantic story, star-crossed lovers overcoming obstacles to be together. They'd cast Patricia and me as the obstacles, the controlling spouses who didn't understand their true love. But stories have different endings depending on who's telling them. In their version, they were heroes fighting for happiness. In reality, they were people who'd chosen selfishness over integrity and paid the appropriate price. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "New Year's Eve party at our place, you better be there." I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." The holidays passed quietly. I worked at the restaurant, spent time with friends, began making plans for the future. January brought new opportunities, a chance to buy into the restaurant as a partner, an offer to manage a second location, possibilities that had seemed impossible when my life was consumed by someone else's deception. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came news that Alicia and Dominic had broken up. Apparently, relationships built on betrayal didn't have strong foundations. Who could have predicted that? I felt nothing when I heard the news. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sympathy. Just the mild interest you might feel hearing about the weather in a city you'd never visit. By summer, I was dating again. A teacher named Jennifer, who had no connection to my previous life and no interest in drama. She was honest about her feelings, direct about her intentions, and refreshingly uncomplicated. "You seem like someone who's learned some hard lessons," she observed one evening. "I have, but I learned them well." "Good. I don't have time for people who haven't figured out how to be honest." Neither did I. Never again. The restaurant partnership became official in September, giving me a stake in something I'd helped build, rather than just managing someone else's vision. Success felt different when you owned part of it. October arrived with another Halloween party invitation from Richard and Nikki. This time, I went as myself. No costume required. "You look good," Nikki observed. "Happy." "I am happy. Turns out that's easier when you're not being lied to every day." "Any word from Alicia?" "None, and I prefer it that way." The party was smaller this year, just close friends rather than the neighborhood spectacle of previous years. Better conversation, less drama, the kind of gathering where people actually enjoyed each other's company. Around midnight, as I was getting ready to leave, Richard pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "For not seeing what was happening sooner. For not warning you when people started talking." "You couldn't have known how bad it was." "Maybe not. But I should have been a better friend. You were a great friend when it mattered. That's what counts." Driving home that night, I thought about the difference a year could make. 12 months earlier, I'd been married to someone who was actively betraying me. Now I was free, successful, and surrounded by people who actually cared about my well-being. The divorce had been finalized almost a year ago, but the real healing had taken longer. Learning to trust again, to open up to new possibilities, to believe that not everyone was hiding destructive secrets. Jennifer was waiting at my house when I got home, having used the key I'd given her the month before, a gesture that had required considerable courage after everything I'd been through. "How was the party?" she asked. "Good. Quiet. Normal." Normal's underrated. It really is. We went to bed that night like any ordinary couple. No secrets between us, no hidden agendas, no elaborate deceptions waiting to explode. Just two people who'd chosen to be honest with each other. It was the best relationship I'd ever had. Sometimes, losing everything you thought you wanted was the only way to discover what you actually needed. Alicia had done me a favor by showing her true nature so clearly. If she'd been more careful, more subtle, I might have wasted years in a marriage that was already over. Instead, I'd learned valuable lessons about trust, verification, and the importance of paying attention to what people did rather than what they said. The last I heard, Alicia was still struggling to rebuild her career and reputation. Dominic had moved twice more, apparently unable to escape the consequences of his choices. I felt no satisfaction in their continued difficulties, but no sympathy either. They'd made adult decisions and received adult consequences. That was how the world was supposed to work. My world, meanwhile, had never been better. Sometimes the best revenge was simply living well while the people who'd wronged you dealt with the natural consequences of their own actions. Justice didn't always require active intervention. Sometimes it just required patience. I had both now. Patience and justice, and a life built on truth rather than deception. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything